Okay, so I thought that Palworld was essentially just Pokemon with guns, and obviously that's not technically wrong per se, but nobody really was able to warn me about we're turning little creatures into a personal sweatshop just to keep the lights on. But let me tell you, just after 4 hours of playing for the very first time the other night on stream, this game definitely has its hooks in me. Now, this isn't a full-blown review or guide of the video, as I'm currently only 4 hours in. This is more going to be like a how I felt jumping into Palworld for the very first time. So first up, the world exploration and survival mechanics, right? Palworld essentially, for my first 4 hours of playing, actually caught me off guard. I didn't really consider all of the different things and, inspiration that they drew from until actually diving in and playing my first 4 hours. Essentially, they've taken survival mechanics from Ark Survival Ascended or Evolved, same thing with like a little bit of stuff maybe from Conan or Valheim, and then kind of mixed it and thrown it in together with like old school Pokemon, catch 'em style mechanics. And I think it does work really well. Like in general, I had an absolute blast playing my first 4 hours. I'm running around. I did find myself getting lost and just catching any and every new pal that I stumbled across. I didn't really have too much of a challenge there. I think it might, be a really low barrier to entry when it comes to, playing the game just with its exploration side of things. But at the same time, I also got to experience a lot of the survival mechanics that I was very familiar with from games like Ark. For instance, the UI, right? If you open up the UI, you've got some stats that you can pump into for your individual character, very similar to Ark. And then alongside that, you also have a engram tree that as you level up, you will get some of these points that you can spend on unlocking some of these engram recipes. So then you can then obviously, craft these at either at benches or in your personal inventory. In general, it was very familiar, and like I said, it had a really good blend of combining those two elements. The same thing goes for the exploration and the map or the world. There's a lot to offer, and the world is a lot bigger than I truly expected it to be. I will state, though, that as beautiful as the individual, elements are for the game, together they are a little bit still jarring to me when it comes to, the character model not really fitting in with the world or not really fitting in with the way the pals look, you name it, right? It is a little bit jarring, and obviously the more time that I put into the game, I'll probably continue to, develop that love or, see past that or see through that. But in general, I would like to state that it completely blew my mind with how much content and, just sheer open world that was involved in the game. Not only that, on top of the open world, you do actually have a quest line or journey line that you can continue to work through. They also provide some additional dungeons. They've got boss fights like open world, random world bosses that you can discover, and even shinies, yes, from the other types of games like this that you can collect that either have different abilities or increased stats, and even their size is much larger, as you guys can see here from this one on screen. It was absolutely a fun, just chaotic experience for the first 4 hours, and I'm absolutely excited to jump back in. And speaking on pals, let's talk about them for a second. They are way more versatile, and they offer way more mechanics than I expected. Some of these pals that you will discover will aid you in combat or on your adventure, right? Something like, healing you over time if you need it or providing specific buffs. While other pals will literally run your entire base of operations, and I mean including gathering the basic materials that you need from either trees or stones or even ore, and then even utilizing things like forges and storage boxes to then melt that ore and store the materials. Additionally, some of the pals are big enough that you can actually craft saddles for them to then actually ride them around. So you not only have pals that you can go and catch, but now you also have some that you can kind of turn into your own personal mount, but nevertheless, the mount can also aid you in combat if you need. The same thing goes for going back to like Ark Survival Ascended. You can actually breed these individual pals, and collecting some of these pals and increasing their star ranking, right, or increasing basically like promoting them from other types of games, you can then use the best quality traits, breed those together to then essentially continue to make this superior ultimate version of whatever pal you're trying to breed. Utilize them for boss fights or dungeon fights, you name it. The game has a lot to offer, and it's much deeper than I originally expected. And when it comes to combat, let's not kid ourselves here, it is actually very janky at times, right? The 4 hours that I was in, I did see some really hilarious, funny things actually take place, but honestly, I think that's part of the fun, right? You essentially have real time with guns, abilities, and just chaos in general. general. It truly hits that sweet spot of not really taking itself too serious, right? Being a little bit more goofy, but also very tactical and strategic at times. And now that brings us to the next big thing that the game has to offer, which is again another core survival mechanic, and also one that kind of relates to other style games outside of Ark, and that is the base building and setup, right? And how it all functions and runs. Well, the first thing that I found out firsthand on that live stream from a couple of buddies of mine who have played, that was playing with me, they basically, picked a strategic location, one that, was up on a cliff. I guess there's only, one way up to that base spot. Additionally, it's got a bunch of different ore nodes, some stone nodes, and even the wood nodes. Because when you start setting up your base here in Palworld, as I mentioned before, you're actually going to start utilizing pals to do a lot of these tasks for you, basically automating the process of gathering the resources, which I do think is a very nice feature. Now, you don't necessarily have to if you didn't want to, but the game is kind of set up in that way where each individual pal that you discover and capture, you will determine, based on its stats, what they are good at doing or not good at doing. And some of them surely are, really good for combat, but not so good at gathering materials. And that's honestly the weird, twisted charm about it, right? Is that you're essentially utilizing what you would consider as thralls from Conan Exiles, right? Or a sweatshop, if you will, to run all these things for you so you don't have to do these mundane tasks if you don't like that aspect of a survival game, right? You're essentially utilizing these pals to do it for you, but they look so cute and cuddly, so you can't help but love to see some of them carrying ore or running over there to chop down a tree and then carrying that wood back to the storage box, you name it, right? They're so cute and cuddly, but at the same time, it just kind of feels wrong because you're making them do the dirty work. And I think that's what truly sets Palworld apart from other games out there in the multiple genres, whether that's catch-em or survival games, right? It kind of combines all of these things together in a not so serious but kind of jokey way, but then still offers a lot of tactical and strategic elements to the game that really can allow you to flourish or absolutely fail. And honestly, with my first 4 hours in, I have barely scratched the surface to what this game all has to offer. I mean, we're talking dungeons, as I've mentioned before, that you can go in and fight. Obviously, there might be elemental, advantages or disadvantages, so you have to look out for that and strategically plan. You've got open world bosses that you can, discover, and heck, even after you fight them, end up capturing them to become your own personal pal. You've got genetics that you can get, via the breeding system to really craft, like I said, really strong pals to take into some of these boss fights. You've got rare pals, or aka shinies, that you can discover, that again are super rare, that might have additional bonus stats or, better abilities. Not only that, they're much larger, so you can enjoy them at a larger scale. I mean, you name it here. Like I said, I've barely scratched the surface, and if you've been on the fence about playing Palworld, I would say honestly give it a shot. It is a very fun, chaotic, goofy yet strategic experience, and it offers way more depth than I originally expected. If you guys have actually played the game, let me know down below in the comments what your favorite part about it is, or what even your favorite pal is, and if you guys have any additional tips or something that I need to know, especially for tonight's live stream. I'll be going live here on the channel on YouTube and also over on my Twitch at twitch.tv/Kodeations. Hope to see you guys over there. As always, don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe here on the channel for everything survival games related, and I'll see you guys on the next one.